Okay, welcome to the next lesson. Okay, unfortunately, bad news for you. It says right here, pause this video. So, yes, even before we get started, I'm going to make you go do some work. Okay, now the reason why we want this work is because eventually you'll have to do this so that the next exercise makes a bit of sense. So, uh, don't worry, it's not a really difficult task, but it is something that's probably a good idea to get it out of the way. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your current what do we call it? We call it the customer management system, the local customer management system. Okay, and make your program display the customer list on in a table. Okay. All right, so this is what I want you to do. So, in other words, when you load up the screen, you see the customers. I would suggest having 5 customers is more than enough. Okay, so just 5 customers. Go over, make yourself a table, and when the page loads, iterate through. Print everything. Okay, so now what would we need to do? You could go to your customer management system. Well, sorry, it's called a local customer management system. I haven't even done the work yet that I assigned you to do. And what I would like you to do is to have a function called display table, and maybe you could give like a table element as the actual thing. So I'm talking about just going through and eventually saying table alt.inner HTML could be equal to trtd, all the usual stuff. Okay, so that's what I'm asking you to do. So go off and do that. Make the appropriate changes down here at the main loading code so you actually display it. Yes, it has to do with on DOM content loaded. Okay, so go off and do that, and then when you're ready, come back here because there will be a further refactoring a little bit later. But you need to have this kind of put in place first. Okay, so hopefully you've had that done. That should have been just a review. I left that in as another exercise for you to do a bit of looping. Okay, all right. So let's carry on now. So I'm back here with this with this file called map demo because I've got a small problem I'd like to solve, and unfortunately it's a fairly significant problem, and it's going to take some time to work your way through. Okay, the other thing I forgot to do is I forgot to set up my own application. My browser's not quite correct, but that's all right. I'll have to work my way around it. Okay, so I'll try my best to explain. All right, you notice over here I've downloaded this file called mockdata.json. Okay, um, and what we did last time was we copied and pasted it into a big function over here called load fake data. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just use the data directly? I mean, right now, we have this file here called mock data. I mean, what's wrong with just calling it, say, customer data, and actually using that customer data directly inside my file, inside my application? And well, this turns out to be a little bit more of a challenge. I mean, it's one of those things I debated for some time if I even wanted to include in the course, but I think it's worthwhile for you to at least see once. So I don't think I will come back and I will make you do this, say, in any of the labs, but I don't make any promises like that. If it is, it won't be any different than what I've done here in this video. Okay, so, but I'm not really planning on it because it is a little bit tricky. But you're going to bump into all kinds of this stuff if you carry on. You do the third year course. The entire third-year course, in terms of programming within JavaScript, is full of this stuff. Okay, so here's our first problem. All right. There's a really clever little program or little function built into JavaScript called fetch. And the way how fetch works is you give it a URL, and it will go and it will grab all of the stuff that you need. Okay, and it will return it back to your program, and which means that, say, if you tried fetching https://www.google.com, it sounds like you'd get back the entire contents of that page, not all of the Google answers, but at least what's on the page. And unfortunately, it doesn't quite work as nicely as this. It starts off, it looks like it's going to be okay, but then things get out of hand because of the way how JavaScript is being implemented. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this fetch function in order to attempt to load up something called customer data.json. Well, I mean, why couldn't we fetch it? I mean, it's just right here. And the initial stuff, especially if you look online, you may find somebody has done something like this. Say, hey, let's fetch it, and we'll just console.log it. I mean, this would be great if this is the way how it works. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work this well. Okay, first of all, it says that fetch API cannot load blah 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 blah. URL scheme must be either HTTP or HTTPS for this type of thing to work. Okay, so forget about this other error, but this is actually the first one. Okay, so here's the problem. Because we're loading things up as files, and this is how we've been loading things, is always as local files, things don't work. Now, I think that most of you, or at least some of you, have been taking the CR1501, and you are familiar with the concept that PHP doesn't work if you just load it up directly inside the browser. What you have to do is you have to put the actual code onto a server, SIT, usually through FileZilla. Then you have to pull the data back through an actual HTML request. Yeah, this is the type of thing that we would have to do here. But rather than setting up a bunch of accounts for people to use FileZilla for this course, because I know not everybody's taking CR1501 right now, I'm going to show you a slightly different way about how to go about this. Okay, the first thing that I want you to do is to open up a browser tab, and I want you to go and try to find something. It's called Chrome Server. Okay, so Chrome Server, and what it is, this is a built-in app. Chances are it'll probably show up, this one is the first one. It's called Web Server for Chrome. Okay, and when you go here, you will end up seeing this web server for Chrome. This is exactly the thing that we're looking for. This is what it looks like. Up here, chances are your browser probably says, would you like to install the app? So in that case, please click on install the app. Mine says launch app because it's already here. I should have removed it first so I could have shown you what it looks like. But in any case, once you have installed it, then you can come back and do a search and find it again and launch it. Okay, and what this is a small web server for Chrome. Alright, so what we're going to do is a couple things about this. You can see here I've got this choose folder, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go and I'm going to find my folder with all of my stuff that I'm working on right now, including that customer data. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, don't close this up. If you close this up, nothing ends up working. Okay, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to go somewhere, http://SIT. No, I'm not going to get you to go to SIT. But one of the things you can go to is 127.0.0.0.0.1. There it is right there, :8887. Okay, and you notice that's exactly the same thing, so feel free to copy and paste that link. And what this is, that is exactly the same page that we just loaded. Here, let me go over to here and let me put something into the body saying served up from a server. Okay, back over to here. If I now reload the page, you'll see that this is now being served from a server. So notice that it's no longer file : something. This is now actually a web request. It's an unsecure web request because it's not HTTPS, but that's fine because it's just some local testing. Okay, but this is actually coming from a web server. The web server happens to be the Chrome browser itself. Okay, so that's our first thing that we're going to cover. All right, now we're going to come back over to my map demo because I want to see this actual value. All right, so you see what I've done is I've said fetch customer data, get back the R, and I said console.log R. And if you notice down here, it says that it shows up the word promise and it shows the word pending. Okay, so what's that about? Okay, well, unfortunately, a side effect about going to do a fetch, because fetch is coming from a server, we have absolutely no idea how long this is going to take. So what we end up having to do is we kind of have to wait for everything to finish. And I'm going to show you two different ways about how to wait for these things. And you'll probably agree when we're finished that neither of them are very nice. In fact, this is one of the big downsides that I really despise about JavaScript myself. Okay, but unfortunately we kind of have to deal with this if we're going to use JavaScript. And JavaScript has become quite popular both on client as well as on the server. Okay, so in any case, the problem is that this takes a very, very long time to go and actually fetch. So it doesn't actually return soon enough that I can actually print it. Because whenever you do a fetch, it immediately returns, even though it hasn't gotten the data. But what I can do is I can start doing some other slightly different things. Okay, so there's a couple of ways how to actually get the values. Now, unfortunately, I've erased my sample, so I'll have to do this from memory. Okay, but here's the first one. Okay, so this fetch will end up going off and getting the data. The problem is that we don't know when it's actually going to happen. In fact, you know what? I'm going to leave the word done down here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain together an extra thing. Okay, so this followed by the word then. Okay, so very strange. So what this is, says go and get this information and then do the following. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up. I'm going to put it onto the next line. Okay, well, what would we like to do? So again, sorry, I don't quite have this saved. So here's what I'm going to do is let me go off and I'm going to say console.log R, which R happens to be, say, the result. Okay, so now let's go and take a look at this and see if what the result is. Now, it's a very interesting thing. Take a look at this. Notice the word done happened first, even though done was at the end. Well, that's because the response from the fetch actually happened quite a bit later. How much later? Well, maybe it was a few milliseconds, but it was later. Okay, so now, does my response actually contain the data? Well, somewhere in here it does. You see there's this thing here called a readable stream. Somewhere in here happens to be the actual data that I'm looking for, but we can't quite get to it yet. And the usual way how I end up doing this is I don't do a console log here quite yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I got to remember which one is called. Now, okay. Now this is what happens if I end up erasing all my stuff because now I can't remember exactly what it was I was going to end up doing with this thing. Console.log r. Okay, well, you know what? Why don't I pause for a second? I'll get myself straightened out and I'll put together the next part of the video. I'm back. Sorry, that's what I get for erasing everything off my other screen. Okay, so here's what we're actually going to do. All right, so notice here, once I get back the customer data, what I'm going to do is I'm going to process it. Now, of course, the interesting thing, now we haven't actually looked at this yet, but remember I've got a file on here called customer data.json. Okay, and you can see that this is the actual data. This is the actual JSON information. Okay, and what that is because that is simply a string, this still needs to go through one extra thing. So I was pretty sure I was going to type this, but I wanted to cover it first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call r.json, and what this does is this will take that readable stream, the result from the fetch, and will JSON decode it into a bunch of objects. Unfortunately, that also takes a little bit of time, so there's one final thing here called res, and what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to say console.log res so we can actually see the real result. Okay, let's go back over here and see if we actually got the right thing. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Let's make this a bit bigger, and you can see now that I've got the actual data loaded up again. But of course, the interesting thing is that the done actually happened before, because this stuff takes a little bit of time. Okay, so now this is one format of being able to load up these values. It's not the format that I tend to prefer. I've got the other format which I would prefer that we actually use. So let me introduce this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to make a function. Okay, and I'm going to call it load customer data. All right, now load customer data. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have this thing called a response, and I'm going to first of all try to fetch from customer data.json. Okay, and by the way, this is not correct yet. And eventually what we're going to have is we're going to have another thing called C data. We'll go to our ESP and we're going to do a JSON to get this thing back as well. And then what are we going to do? Well, let's just do a console.log C data, so hopefully we can actually see things. Okay, so instead of this stuff, this is what we're going to do. And of course, this looks a little bit nicer. Now, here's our problem. Rather than having the word then and chain together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the word await in front of this, because this takes a bunch of time. And you know what? This response turning into JSON also takes a little bit of time because, well, because this part took a little bit of time. So I'm going to be waiting a whole bunch of things. And in order for this to work, what I have to do is I have to turn this function into something slightly different called an asynchronous function. Okay? And all that I'm going to do is I'm just going to load the customer data. Okay. All right, so let's save this, and we'll say console.log the new way, preferred way, and let's take a look and see if we got this. So yes, this is definitely my new way, and you can see I've still got the same things, but you'll notice that I still have the same problem. My done function is not actually happening after this. It happens to be happening quite a bit sooner, okay, because this stuff takes time and the entire program finishes. So this is called an asynchronous function, and what's happening is when I call the function, it returns instantly and then it says done, even though the function itself hasn't actually happened yet. So this is some of the things that makes JavaScript programming very, very difficult, especially for doing interesting things like reaching into a server and getting data. This whole asynchronous nature makes things very, very difficult. Okay, and as I say, it's not really something for this course, but you're going to see a lot of it in your future courses. So let's continue on, though, and see if we can actually make some use for this. Okay, so the problem, of course, is that I can't simply load the data down here and then do something like console.log the customer. Okay, so customer. Okay, because really what you'd want to be able to do is you'd probably want to be able to say a global variable like this, let customer is equal to nothing, and then here you'd probably want to say that the customer is equal to CData. Okay, so you want to say load customer, and of course you want to get the actual customer back so you can actually view it and make use of it. But when you reload this, it comes back undefined. Why? Well, because it blasted through so quick. Unfortunately, you have to wait before you continue on. And this is a bit of a problem, and it's a real problem because of this console.logging. Now, if you had, say, a GUI, what you could do is you could, up in this point, you could say, put this into the GUI. Okay, and now this would make things appear, and that's actually why I got you to do that refactoring at the very beginning, because I'm going to get you to do this type of thing, but not through the console, because the console is quite a bit tougher. But the problem is that you can't continue on with this until the entire thing is loaded, and the question is, how do you know when it's loaded? Okay, about the only thing that you can do in here to make this a little bit more synchronous. For example, if I really wanted to print out the word customer followed by done, this is how I'd have to do it. Okay, I have no choice other than to do something like this. Typically what I would do is I would create an interval timer. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is let's have a function, and the function is going to have something, and I'm going to simply check maybe every 400 milliseconds. Okay, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the question, if the customer does not equal to undefined, okay, then what do I have? I'm going to say console.log customer, and I'm going to say console.log done. Okay, not the variable done, but the phrase done. Okay, and I'm going to also say clear interval. Okay, now, of course, clearing the interval means that I need to have a timer, so let's have a load timer, and we'll clear the interval timer called load timer. Okay, so you see what I've done is now, rather than being part of the main, this printing now makes an attempt every 400 milliseconds, and it keeps trying, and eventually, whenever it finally gets done, then it will be printed out. So let's find out whether or not this actually gets things into the right order. Okay, that's perfect. It's now in the correct order. And of course, what you would really end up doing you would probably, if you had a real system, you'd update some loading progress bar. So this would be like one of these websites that you start off and it shows a 0% loaded, 1% loaded, 2% loaded, and so on until finally it hit 100%, and then finally everything would be displayed to the screen. Okay. Now, chances are you probably won't run into this type of a problem on your exercise I'm about to get you to do. But here we go. I'm going to say pause this video. Okay, well, let's change it now. So after this video, okay, try to use the fetch to get JSON data from a file. Okay, and put it into the customer, so you can try this one. It doesn't matter which one. Maybe what you should do is, sorry, before we start this, create a new customer management system, and let's call it CMS JSON file that uses fetch to get the data from a file on your server. Okay, well, sorry, your PC or your Chrome server, I guess is more the case, Chrome server. All right, so after this video, no, not after this video. Pause this video and do this. And what I'm going to do is I have to stop now, and I will join together with the next one so that you can see the final thing, which is actually getting it from an actual server, just so you have the full picture about how this works. Okay, so pause the video here, go and try this one. At this point, things are getting quite a bit trickier, and I've got one thing that's a little bit trickier yet. Okay, so check out the next part of this video. Hello and welcome back to the final little piece of our experimentation here with fetching stuff from remote places. Okay, so let's see if we can make this a little bit more interesting by moving the data not from here, not just from a local file, but actually off to a server. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate absolutely everything about this, but I'm going to give you at least sort of a basic introduction about how you would do things. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll make up some fake data, and you can also try this. You can try modifying your program to see if you get back the right data. Okay, so first of all, what I've done over here is I've opened up a terminal, and let me make a connection to SIT. Okay, now this is for the benefit of those people who have taken the CR 1501. That's fine. If you haven't, it's also fine. You don't really need to know for sure what's going on here, but in any case, everybody who has taken 1501 knows that there's a folder called public HTML. Inside public HTML, I've got a folder called CP3230, and inside CP3230, I've got a folder called Ajax. Okay, there's a reason why I called it this, but anyway. And inside here, I've got something called demo.php. Alright, so let me pop open demo.php, okay, and let's start making some modifications to it. Okay, now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start making up a little bit of data. Now, this is not a course about PHP, so I'm not going to worry so much about what's going on here, but I want to make up a couple of small things. Okay, let's suppose that I wanted to have my server over an SIT send back a couple of customers. Okay, so what types of things would I need? Okay, so first of all, let me have a customer call C1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. So what do you think I'm doing right here? Well, that's creating an object called C1. All right, well, C1 probably has a CID. Okay, so 123, 123, 123. All right, C1 probably has a first name, so Mr. That's always going to be the first name. Okay, let's make C1 and last name. Oh, hang on. Let's call him Doctor, and we'll call this one Strange. Okay, so here we go. Here's customer one. His name is Dr. Strange. Let's have a second customer. New STD class. So STD standard class C2. Let's give them a different CID. 222 222 111. And let's set up C2's first name. Okay, and we'll go back and we'll use our superhero names that we had before. So let's have Tony and Stark. So C2. Sorry, get the fingers going the right way. C2, here we go. And last name, Stark. Okay, here we go. And result. Result is going to be an array. That's how you make an array in PHP, and this is how I make a hard-coded array in PHP. So here we go. Here's exactly two objects, two standard class objects inside an array called result. And notice what I'm doing is I'm echoing out the result, but I'm going through something called a JSON encode. And guess what that gives me? That gives me JSON encoded values. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let me go back to my browser, and I think, no, I must have closed it up. So let me go and browse over to here. So https://sit, and oh, there it was right there. Okay, so here's Ajax, and here's the demo. And reload the page. Did I forget to save that file? I think I forgot to save the file. Okay, so over here, load, and it says unexpected echo. Did I forget to put a semicolon? You guys should have told me that. Okay, right out a semicolon. Let's try it again, and here we go. Now, of course, look at what I've got. This happens to be an object. It's a JSON format. It is an array, and inside the array are exactly two objects that happen to have exactly the right properties that we've been using before. Now you might say, okay, well, big deal about this. Well, here's actually the big deal about this. Although I hard-coded the values here, there's absolutely nothing stopping me from reading this stuff out of a database. Okay, in fact, when I read it out of a database, this is absolutely trivial to do. You make the connection to the database, you prepare a statement, you execute it, and you get the result, and you JSON encode the result. This is a trick I use all the time. Okay, in fact, it shouldn't be any, in fact, you should already know this. If you're taking CR 1501, you should have been through this a pile of times. Now, the only thing that's a little bit funny up here, notice that there's this special phrase here at the top called a header. And what I've said is that access control allow origin is star. And what this means is because my request is coming from my MacBook locally, I'm basically saying it is okay to let people other than me request this data. So in other words, because I'm a server and it's my data, I could actually restrict it so that if somebody tries to pull this data, I could say, no, go away. You have to be coming from one of my pages. But I'm actually allowing everybody in the great World Wide Web to be able to hit this server and be able to return back these values. So in any case, let's save this one, make sure everything is up to date. Okay, and let's go back and start messing with our own local file. So back here we go to our own local stuff, and notice what I've got. I've still got that same delay loop that keeps loading or keeps progressing until finally everything is loaded. And of course, before, what I used to do is I used to ask for the customer data.json. Well, what's stopping me from simply going to this URL right here? And the answer is absolutely nothing. Okay, that is as difficult as it is in order to load the data. Let's go over and actually take a look at it. So remember, this is my actual stuff. It says from a server. This time, if I reload, you'll see that after my slight delay, I get exactly two objects, and those are exactly the two objects that I just sent back. So that's the way how JavaScript on a browser can actually hook into other languages on the back end. And although I wrote my back end here in PHP, you can actually write your back end in a whole pile of other languages. For example, when you take next semester, when you take 3231, chances are you'll end up writing a back end in Java. And you'll probably also write a backend in C#. That's what those courses are about. If you continue on, you take the software development stream for third year, a lot of the backend code is written in JavaScript. So it's JavaScript on both sides. So this happens to be a way how you can write up a solution that crosses between two different languages. And yes, you're always allowed to use more than one language. A very common technique that I've used in a lot of my programming exercises that I've done, I don't mean exercises in class, but actual real-life applications, they're written exactly the same way. The front end is written in JavaScript. The back end is written in PHP because PHP gets along quite well with MySQL databases, and that combination of those two things is really quite a convenient language combination. Okay, so all that I'm going to do is I've got one final thing, so I'm going to say pause this video. So, no, after this video, here's what I want you to do, and it's a very simple thing. Get the data from my URL right here. Okay, so there it is right there. It should be just as simple as changing the URL or the parameter of the fetch, and everything else should end up working. Okay, all right, so that's going to be the end of this. As I promised at the beginning, I have absolutely no plans to throw something like this in place for either the next lab or for the final exam. Okay, so it was just something because I thought it was really important that you see how data could actually be pulled out from one place to another. Unfortunately, it is really tricky because of the asynchronous nature. Okay, but I think usually these asynchronous functions right here are pretty easy to write. Okay, a lot of them will look exactly the same. The only thing is, before using the data, sometimes you have to put up these horrible little loops where you're basically waiting for something to happen. But if you're not dealing with consoles, then it's not so bad. Okay, so if you simply say once the data is ready, instead of actually console.logging the data you take and you put it into the actual control like a table, this stuff tends to make a little bit more sense. So chances are you won't need to see very many of these pause loops, but sometimes you may bump into them. Okay, but that's all we're going to do here. So let me go back to here. So this is your exercise, and of course, please upload a picture that this was actually completed. Okay, all right, so come back because I've got some more stuff for you in the next video.